Prosecuting Netanyahu while dismantling Hamas actually be a pretty good way of setting the tone for peace negotiations. Is Biden tweaking? I'll read the. I want to read their full statements before I have a strong opinion on it. One thing that I'm curious about, I don't actually know the process for this. For the ICJ is simply a court. That's all the ICJ is. Meaning a court can't arrest somebody. A court can't bring a case. Somebody else has to bring a case to the court. So for the ICJ's ruling, it wouldn't be investigation. For their consideration of of Israel failing to uphold their obligations to the Convention on the Prevention of Genocide, somebody has to bring that case, and it was South Africa. I wonder how the ICC investigates. Like, do they? Because I think the ICC includes an investigative body as well. It's not just judges that consider things. I'm curious how cases get brought up in the ICC. Like, do they choose what to investigate? Do other people submit things to it? I have no idea. Someone said it can either be referred by the UNSC, a state party, or the prosecutor themselves. For the ICC? Or were you talking about the ICJ? What is UNSC? The United Nations of South Korea? What's the best argument against a Palestinian supporter who believes that there is a genocide happening? It seems lack of evidence is enough for them. I mean, people have different feelings on what they feel like a genocide is. If we truly wanted to make, I'm not in a position to make the best argument for it. I'm going kind of by more generalized knowledge of what genocide is, and then what I've read in terms of like the ICJ report, the judges' press release. What would you call their consideration? What would you call that? The 100 and whatever page, would it be the application? Their application response, the complaint response? Well, I don't know what you would call it, but yeah. I think that if you wanted to have a really strong counter or support for genocide, I think the case that I see referenced the most, because I think this is the first or only time, would be all of the court stuff relating to the Bosnian genocide. I think this might be the only major case that's like run through the ICJ. So this is your first time you're getting a bunch of actual judges commenting on and making rulings on things in relation to genocide. So I think if you and Rwanda, for some reason, I just don't see that one referenced ever. Okay, this is one as well. I see this one in papers that I've read talking about genocide and everything. This case gets referenced a ton. I don't know why it is more than the Rwandan one. I don't know what the outcome of the Rwanda one is, but yeah, this case. So I feel like reading through this would probably give you my layman's feeling. I feel like this would give you the best perspective on the legal precedent, the jurisprudence. This just is going to tell me it means legal theory or philosophy of law. Maybe the legal precedents on how you would look at a genocide case. As a Bosnian, not going to lie, the case for genocide is way more clear than our genocide. As a Bosnian, not going to lie, the case for genocide is way more clear than our genocide. I don't know what you're saying. The case for Israel committing a genocide is more clear than your case for committing a genocide? What's your opinion on people wanting Netanyahu arrested and tried but completely ignoring the mass graves in Ukraine? Well, I think people want Putin arrested as well, right? But, I mean, I don't know. Those people are obviously hypocrites. But don't ever let other people's hypocrisies... before we get into the ICC, we'll read it. Fuck, I'm still doing emails. 17 left. Before we get into the ICC stuff, okay? Don't let the hypocrisy and the stupidity of other people push you into stupid positions. Don't ever let that happen, okay? When you're digging through, when the ICC thing comes out, your thought shouldn't be like, fuck, is this going to validate or fight against the things that my political opponents have said, and is it going to reinforce or fight? That shouldn't be your thought, right? The thought is, well, the ICC is our international criminal individual investigating body, like investigates individuals. And then we'll just read and see what they have to say. We could disagree with them at the end. We could agree with them at the end. It could be that they have information that we don't have. It's possible as well. Like, you just don't know. You just have to read it, check it out, analyze it. Okay, so this is the official news release from the International Criminal Court. On the basis of evidence collected and examined by my office, I have reasonable grounds to believe that Haniyeh Sinwar, head of the Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, in the Gaza Strip, Mohammed Daib Ibrahim al-Masri, more commonly known as Daif commander-in-chief of the military wing of Hamas, known as the Al-Qassam Brigades, and Ismail Haniyeh, head of Hamas Political Bureau, bear criminal responsibility for the following war crimes and crimes against humanity committed on the territory of Israel and the state of Palestine in the Gaza Strip from at least the 7th of October 2023. Now, to recenter, the International Criminal Court, when they make charges of crimes, these are always going to be focused on individuals. These are never about states and always about individuals. So the first charge here is we have extermination as a crime against humanity, contrary to Article 7, subsection 1b of the Rome Statute. Now, remember, when we're talking about the Rome Statute, you just have to Google Rome Statute. You're going to get this document from the ICC, and any particular crime that they reference here, we should be able to look up and see exactly what they're talking about. So we can go to Article 7. I won't do this for everyone, but just if you want to know any of these, this is how you would do this, right? So you would look at Article 7 right here, and then you would see they're referring to 7.1b of the Rome Statute. And so 7.1b means, for the purpose of this statute, crimes against humanity means any of the following acts when committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack. So Article 7, subsection 1, subsection B would be extermination. And if you're curious about, oh, well, I would like a little bit more information, then you can Google Rome Statute elements of crimes, and then you'll come up with this book here. And this, for a few of the articles, 6, 7, and 8, is going to give you a specific breakdown of the elements that need to be met for this particular conviction to come through. It'd have to be proven, right? So for Article 7, we would see this, 7.1b. We can scroll and we can look at crimes against humanity of extermination, elements. Now, when you're talking about a crime, an element is a necessary part of it, meaning, I believe, somebody correct me wrong, an element means that every single part of these needs to be met for the crime to be legitimate, right? So Article 7, subsection 1, subsection B, crime against humanity of extermination. These are the 4 elements for that crime. 1, the perpetrator killed one or more persons, including by inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of part of a population. 2, the conduct constituted or took place as part of a mass killing of members of a civilian population. 3, the conduct was committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against a civilian population. And 4, the perpetrator knew that the conduct was part of or intended the conduct to be part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against a civilian population. So keep in mind that when we're talking about crimes here from the International Criminal Court, there is a very strong, there is a required mens rea component to every single one of these crimes, meaning that the perpetrator knew that the conduct was a part of or intended to be a part of a particular thing. This means that for a criminal conviction in the International Criminal Court of Justice, the mens rea aspect is crucial and required to convict for that particular crime. This is one of the reasons why I read that paper, and other people have been critical of the Goldstone report, for instance. It gets brought up a lot, is because when the Goldstone report was recommending charges for crimes, they didn't engage in the mens rea analysis whatsoever. They were merely looking at what had happened on the ground, and they said, oh, well, if 10 people are killed, it's probably this war crime. That's not how war crimes work. And then remember what I've said before is if you blow up a building and 100 civilians die, 1,000 civilians die, that's not necessarily a war crime. You need the mens rea aspect of it. It is an element of the crime. You have to have the criminal state of mind to be convicted of a crime in the International Criminal Court, okay? Okay. I won't go through every single one of these, but this just to give you an idea of how these particular things work. So remember, for ICC, International Criminal Court, the Rome Statute lays out the crime. The Elements of Crime book will lay out the necessary elements to charge for a crime, and the International Criminal Court only charges individuals with crimes, not states. Okay. How strong is the legal burden of proof for the ICC? Is it beyond a reasonable doubt? Preponderance of my guess is going to be probable cause or something to bring an indictment is going to be my guess. Which I believe an arrest is essentially an indictment, right? That'd be my guess, but I could be wrong. We could look up these things. It's not going to be beyond a reasonable doubt just to charge somebody with a crime, though, right? Murder as a crime against humanity, contrary to Article 7, subsection 1A, as a war crime, contrary to Article 8, 2CI. Taking hostages as a war crime, contrary to Article 8, 2C3. And other acts of sexual violence as crimes against humanity, contrary to Article 7, 1G. And also as war crimes pursuant to Article 8 in the context of captivity. Torture as a crime against humanity, contrary to Article 7, and also as a war crime, contrary to Article 8, in the context of captivity. Other inhumane acts as a crime against humanity, contrary to Article 7, in the context of captivity. Cruel treatment as a war crime, contrary to Article 8, in the context of captivity. And outrages upon personal dignity as a war crime, contrary to Article 8, in the context of captivity. So it looks like almost all of these charges, half of these are in relation to what happened on October 7th, and it seems like a lot of these other charges are in relation to treatment of hostages that have been held, essentially. My office submits that the war crimes alleged in these applications were committed in the context of an international armed conflict between Israel and Palestine and a non-international armed conflict between Israel and Hamas running in parallel. So remember, in the past, we've argued on this stream before, some people have come to me and they've said, oh no, this is obviously not an international armed conflict, or oh, this is obviously like an internal blah, blah, blah. None of these things are very clear cut. They generally are pretty easy to figure out, but the problem is, remember, Israel-Palestine is a very, very, very unique issue, and it's very difficult to sort out when you're having these conflicts. Well, do we treat this as like an international armed conflict? Do we treat this as like an occupied territory? Do we treat this as a policing issue? Do we treat this as is Hamas a non-state actor? However, my understanding is, for the most part, it doesn't really matter that much. That a lot of similar rules. Now, it's going to matter if you're policing a people versus being in a international versus non-international armed conflict, but most of the rules are about the same, I think, between international and non-international, like armed conflict. When you're in armed conflict with people, your obligations and everything are roughly the same. Keep in mind the controversial part of this isn't charges, but whether the ICC even has jurisdiction because of the necessary statehood element for signatories. I don't know if that's very controversial or not. I would imagine the ICC easily should be able to review these behaviors. That'd be my guess, but we'll see. We submit that the crimes against humanity charged were part of a widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population of Israel by Hamas and other armed groups pursuant to organizational policies. Some of these crimes, in our assessment, continue to this day. If you want to play politics for a little bit, because my guess is going to be a lot of lefties are probably dancing and happy over the Netanyahu charges, which we'll get to. And the Minister of Defense, Gallant? Wait. Fuck. Yoav Gallant. Gallant or Gallant? But keep in mind here that we have the sexual violence being used in a systematic way, and we've also got violence used in... Oh, I'm sorry. They included both in here. You've got other acts of violence, probably in October 7th, and then also as war crimes pursuant to Article 8 2E6 in the context of captivity. So against people on October 7th and against captives. So I don't know how many people are gonna, but yeah. Some of these crimes in our assessment continue to this day. My office submits that there are reasonable grounds to believe that, okay, so reasonable suspicion, I guess, is the standard here for issuing an arrest. There are reasonable grounds to believe that Sinwar, Deif, and Haniyeh are criminally responsible for the killing of hundreds of Israeli civilians in attacks perpetrated by Hamas, in particular its military wing, the Al-Qassam Brigades, and other armed groups on the 7th of October, 2023, and the taking of at least 245 hostages. Okay, so this is in relation to, October 7th. And probably the hostages afterwards, right? As part of our investigations, my office has interviewed victims and survivors, including former hostages and eyewitnesses from 6 major attack locations: Kfar Aza, Holit, the location of the Supernova Music Festival, Be'eri, near Oz, and Nahal Oz. The investigation also relies on evidence such as CCTV footage, authenticated audio, photo, and video material, statements by Hamas members, including the alleged perpetrators named above, and expert evidence. It is the view of my office that the expert evidence one is very interesting. I'm curious what that means. Well, typically in U.S., I believe this is an international more or less thing. An expert witness is a witness who's qualified to come in and make statements on things that they're not witnessed, that they haven't witnessed, right? An expert witness is usually somebody whose qualifications allow them to make judgments about a thing that they haven't observed firsthand. So for instance, let's say that a wife gets really mad, kills her husband, goes to court, and she tries to claim temporary insanity. The defense for that might bring in a psychologist who's been familiar with people that have gone insane by killing people in the past or whatever. And even though he didn't directly witness the wife killing the husband, that expert witness might say, well, as somebody with a lot of experience here, I can say that this behavior would be expected, or it would be unreasonable to expect them to do blah, blah, blah. An expert witness. So when they say expert evidence here, I don't know if they just mean evidence provided to them by people, or if they mean they have like experts that they personally have had go through some of this evidence and make declarations on it. I'm not sure 100%. It's a random thing. In the view of my office, it is the view of my office that these individuals planned and instigated the commission of crimes on October 7th, 2023, and have, through their own actions, including personal visits to hostages shortly after their kidnapping, acknowledged their responsibility for those crimes. We submit that these crimes could not have been committed without their actions. They are charged both as co-perpetrators and as superiors pursuant to Article 25 and 28 of the Rome Statute. During my own visit to Kibbutz Be'eri and Kibbutz Kfar Aza, as well as to the site of Supernova Music Festival in Reem, I saw the devastating scenes of these attacks and the profound impact of the unconscionable crimes charged in the applications filed today. Speaking with supervisors, I heard how the love within a family, the deepest bonds between a parent and a child, were contorted to inflict unfathomable pain through calculated cruelty and extreme callousness. These acts demand accountability. My office also submits that there are reasonable grounds to believe that hostages taken from Israel have been kept in inhuman conditions, and that some have been subject to sexual violence, including rape, while being held in captivity. We have reached that conclusion based on medical records, contemporaneous video, and documentary evidence, and interviews with victims and survivors. My office also continues to investigate reports of sexual violence committed on October 7th. I wish to express my gratitude to the survivors and the families of the victims of the 7th of October attacks for their courage in coming forward to provide their accounts to my office. We remain focused on further deepening our investigations of all crimes committed as part of these attacks and will continue to work with all partners to ensure that justice is delivered. I again reiterate my call for the immediate release of all hostages taken from Israel and for their safe return to their families. This is a fundamental requirement of international humanitarian law. There is no instance in international humanitarian law ever where it's permitted to take hostages. You can have prisoners of war, but never hostage taking. And even soldiers and military people can count as hostages depending on if they were captured as part of a non-military conflict at a particular point in time. Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. So Benjamin Netanyahu is the current prime minister of Israel, meaning he is the person chosen by the coalition government, meaning the parties that have come together in the Knesset have chosen him to be the head of the country, essentially as the prime minister, right? And then, the true head of the country, some would argue, sometimes for Israel, Yoav Gallant is the minister of defense. This is and obviously the IDF and the prime minister work very closely. Some people would argue sometimes that the IDF even has more say in what goes on than the prime minister themselves, depending on what you're particularly talking about. But these are going to be like your two head honchos, really, when you're talking about Israel committing to any kind of military activity. It is the prime minister and then especially the minister of defense. And then sometimes you'll also talk about the, I believe it's their chief of staff for Israel as well, is the next in command. Ramat Kal. Okay. He doesn't get mentioned much, but all right. I've heard you say a few times that the IDF sometimes acts as head of state again, instead of the PM. Can you expand on that? I think that the military component of Israel and the political component of Israel oftentimes work very closely with each other. A lot of prime ministers used to be part of the military. And then there are, supposedly, I believe there are times that the IDF can even kind of act independently. I believe this was stated during the Six-Day War. Who was the prime minister? It was Eshkol, I think. We don't have to get into this too deeply, but like there are times where like the IDF will kind of like take the reins, I think, on things. I've heard this accusation. You don't really hear much of it. I don't remember hearing much of Eshkol at all during the Six-Day War. But yeah, the military component of Israel is obviously like a very important part of the government. Yeah. Okay. So Benjamin Netanyahu, current prime minister of Israel, has been for almost 20 years. Not really, 15, 20 years. He was from 96 to 2000. I think he got kicked out, and then or to 99 or whatever. And then Yoav Gallant. I don't know how long he's been minister of defense for. Probably mostly under Netanyahu, but I'm not sure. Okay. On the basis of evidence collected and examined by my office, I have reasonable grounds to believe that Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, and Yoav Gallant, The Minister of Defense of Israel bear criminal responsibility for the following war crimes and crimes against humanity committed on the territory of the state of Palestine and the Gaza Strip from at least the 8th of October 2023. People say, by the way, just as a quick aside, people will say things like committed war crimes or say crimes against humanity. Technically, people just kind of say these casually, like, oh my God, genocide, crimes against humanity, blah, blah, blah. Technically, anytime somebody, or at least from the ICC, is invoking these things, these do refer to specific things. So crimes against humanity come under Article 7. Crimes that we consider war crimes come under Article 8. So these will be like, when somebody says crimes against humanity, they're always talking about Article 7 stuff, or, well, technically should be. Or when they're talking about crimes against, crimes against humanity and war crimes, they're talking about stuff under Article 8. Okay. So we have starvation of civilians as a method of warfare as a war crime, contrary to Article 8 of the statute. I won't read all the subsections. So this is probably in regards to people talking about the collective punishment of Palestinians by using starvation or whatever. Yeah. Willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health, contrary to Article 8, or cruel treatment as a war crime, contrary to Article 8. Let's see, 8-2A3. I'm guessing this has to do with civilian population, but let's check. 8-2A3. The court shall have jurisdiction with respect to war crimes, particularly when committed as part of a plan or policy or as part of a large-scale commission of such crimes. For the purposes of this statute, war crimes means grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions of the 12th of August 1949, namely, any of the following acts against persons or property protected under the provisions of the relevant Geneva Convention. And 3 is willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health. I'm almost for sure this is going to be in relation to civilian populations. We can look at under the elements of, we've got 8-2-3, right? Is what we're talking about? I'm sorry, hold on, real quick. Do I respond to chat comments? Destiny, the ICC is not talking about the Rome Statute in regard to Israel. Israel is not a signatory. They are only a signatory to Geneva and international common law. Doesn't matter. As long as the ICC has been granted jurisdiction, which it can do through a couple of ways, the ICC can absolutely make charges against people that are not signatories to the Rome Statute. When you say the ICC is not talking about the Rome Statute in regard to Israel, the ICC is authorized and charged with their job via the Rome Statute. Everything they say is going to be in regards to the Rome Statute. That's the only thing the ICC can be talking about. Okay, so 8-2A3 is the perpetrator caused great physical or mental pain or suffering to or serious bodily or serious injury to body or health of one or more persons. Such person or persons were protected under one or more of the Geneva Conventions of 1949. I believe that the Geneva Conventions of 1949 are going to be where you get like concepts, I think, like hors de combat. So basically civilians, I think, or people that shouldn't be targeted by things like civilians or people that aren't basically military people, I believe is overview, protecting the vulnerable in war. IHL, International Humanitarian Law, is a set of rules seeks for humanitarian reasons to limit the effects of armed conflict. IHL protects persons who are not or who are no longer participating in hostilities, and it restricts the means and methods of warfare. So remember, people that can't be targeted in warfare, the term that we use for them is hors de combat. These should be non-targetable people out of action due to injury or damage. I believe that civilians count as well. I don't think that that's just people that are removed from combat, although now that I'm looking at the word. Hors de combat is a term used in international humanitarian law, which describes a soldier who cannot fight due to being sick, wounded, captured, or incapacitated. These soldiers are not allowed to be attacked or harmed because they pose no threat. I thought this included civilians too. Maybe it's civilians and hors de combat. But okay. Civilians and hors de combat, I guess. Hors de combat versus civilians. Let me just look this up real quick. I don't think there's going to be a difference actually between this. When we talk about international humanitarian law, or when you talk about laws of armed conflict, you have military people that you can target, and then you've got other people that you can't target. Well, really what you have is people that you can target and then everybody else. And all those other people are, I think, more or less treated the same. I say more or less, but I think they're treated exactly the same. You can only target military things, and then everybody else is untargetable. I guess technically hors de combat is referring to removing people who were previously targetable and making them non-targetable. So like soldiers that are injured and stuff. Okay. Sorry, okay. So overstate combat and civilians would be treated similarly, I guess, but okay. The perpetrator was aware of the factual circumstances that established protected status. The conduct took place in the context of and was associated with an international armed conflict. The perpetrator was aware of factual circumstances that established the existence of an armed conflict. Okay. I'm guessing this is the war crime. I'm guessing this is referring to civilians is what they're charging here, but they probably just talk about it. I'll just keep reading. Sorry. Willfully killing, contrary to Article 2, A1, or murder as a war crime, intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population as a war crime, contrary to Articles 82B1 and 82EI, extermination and or murder, contrary to Articles 71B and 71A, including in the context of deaths caused by starvation as a crime against humanity, persecution as a crime against humanity, contrary to Article 71B, and other inhumane acts as crimes against humanity, contrary to Article 71K. How does it take into account collateral damage? It seems like any collateral can be prosecuted. No, this is what I was just about to say. Remember, for the International Criminal Court, every single crime that's laid out here necessarily has a strong mens rea component to it. So if we look up any one of these crimes, there's going to be something saying that you need to be aware of this or intending to cause it. So for instance, if I look up here, like persecution as a crime against humanity, contrary to, so if we look up the elements of this crime, 71H, and before it doesn't say this, I'm fucking wrong. JKLMNO, wait, HI. Oh, so if we look up crime against the humanity or persecution, the perpetrator severely deprived, contrary to international law, one or more persons of fundamental rights. The perpetrator targeted such person or persons by reason of the identity of a group or collectively, or targeted the group or collectivity as such. Such targeting was based on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender, as defined in Article 7, Paragraph 3, or other grounds that are universally recognized as impermissible under international law. I think that's a Use Kogan's concept. The conduct was committed in connection with any act referred to in Article 7, Paragraph 1. The conduct was committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against the civilian population. And then I think they're usually listed as the last one, the mens rea aspect. The perpetrator knew that the conduct was part of, or intended the conduct to be a part of, a widespread or systematic attack directed against the civilian population. So when the ICC is prosecuting stuff, the ICC is not looking for collateral damage or mistakes. There needs to be an intentionality part. So doing an attack on a building and accidentally killing 500 civilians is not enough. If the ICC is charging a crime, then their thought is, well, no, you did this intentionally and you knew that this was in contravention of international law or something in the Rome Statute, right? My office submits that the war crimes alleged in these applications were committed in the context of an international armed conflict between Israel and Palestine and a non-international armed conflict between Israel and Hamas, together with other Palestinian armed groups running in parallel. We submit that the crimes against humanity charged were committed as part of a widespread and systematic attack against the Palestinian civilian population pursuant to state policy. These crimes, in our assessment, continue to this day. My office submits the evidence we have collected, including interviews with survivors and eyewitnesses, authenticated video, photo, and audio material, satellite imagery, and statements from the alleged perpetrator group, shows that Israel has intentionally and systematically deprived the civilian population in all parts of Gaza of objects indispensable to human survival. So it's possible, for instance, that we could disagree with what they're saying here, but also it's possible that they have access to evidence that hasn't been made publicly available, or they might think that stuff that they've seen does rise at least to the probable cause needed to issue this arrest warrant. This occurred through the imposition of a total siege over Gaza that involved completely closing the three border crossing points, Rafah, Kerem Shalom, and Erez, I think, from the 8th of October 2023 for extended periods, and then by arbitrarily restricting the transfer of essential supplies, including food and medicine, through the border crossings after they were reopened. The siege also included cutting off cross-border water pipelines from Israel to Gaza, Gazans' principal source of clean water, for a prolonged period beginning from the 9th of October 2023, and cutting off and hindering electricity supplies from at least 8th of October 2023 until today. This took place alongside other attacks on civilians, including those queuing for food, obstruction of aid delivery by humanitarian agencies, and attacks on and killing of aid workers, which forced many agencies to cease or limit their operations in Gaza. These are very, very, very strong claims that I hope that they've either gathered evidence for or think that they can find evidence of, because unless there's like some really, really, really high thing, maybe we could read earlier in here for things like negligence, the mens rea has to be here, that like you knew that you were killing these people because they were just like civilians queuing for food. It sounds like they're referring to things that we're aware of. So when they say, like, for instance, like killing civilians queuing for food, are they referring to the flour massacre? Obstruction of aid delivery by humanitarian agencies, are they talking about like the border controls? And then attacks on and killing of aid workers, are they talking about the World Kitchen, the WCK attack probably? I'm guessing these are the three events they're referring to, but my office submits that these acts were committed as part of a common plan to use starvation as a method of war and other acts of violence against the Gazan civilian population as a means to, 1, eliminate Hamas, 2, secure the return of the hostages which Hamas has abducted, and 3, collectively punish the civilian population of Gaza whom they perceived as a threat to Israel. And that Netanyahu specifically ordered it. No? Well, yeah, but remember, it's stronger than that. It can't be, remember, the mens rea aspect here can't be that Netanyahu ordered the attacks to do these things. It's that they ordered the attacks knowing that they were just killing civilians. So, for instance, let's say that there was Israeli intelligence that, or they believe that, like, we think that Hamas are operating out of these vehicles, and Netanyahu, I doubt he would be, Yoav Gallant, I don't even know if he's the one personally authorizing it. They say, like, okay, we'll strike that truck, and that truck, and then they blow them up. That's still not enough to consider it a war crime. They would need to know, like, that those are civilians, let's bomb them, let's get them. Right, that would be the mens rea aspect that you would need there. The effects of the use of starvation as a method of warfare, together with other attacks and collective punishment against the civilian population of Gaza, are acute, visible, and widely known, and have been confirmed by multiple witnesses interviewed by my office, including local and international medical doctors. They include malnutrition, dehydration, profound suffering, and an increasing number of deaths among the Palestinian population, including babies, other children, and women. He's talking about the effects here. Technically, these aren't relevant to the crime itself because, again, the effects of a thing aren't important. It's the intentionality. But, I mean, you can include these here to show that, like, this is the outcome of a particular crime you're charging. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. Just remember that the effects of a thing aren't related to they don't need to be there for the crime itself, right? Famine is present in some areas of Gaza and is imminent in other areas. As UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned more than 2 months ago, 1.1 million people in Gaza are facing catastrophic hunger, the highest number of people ever recorded anywhere at any time as a result of an entirely man-made disaster. Today, my office seeks to charge 2 of those most responsible, Netanyahu and Gallant, both as co-perpetrators and as superiors, pursuant to Article 25 and Article 28 of the Rome Statute. I think Article 25 and 28, I think, give you the ability to charge people that order crimes. Let me check real quick. As, like, perpetrators themselves. Yes. So Article 28 talks about responsibility of commanders and other superiors. In addition to other grounds of criminal responsibility under this statute for crimes within the jurisdiction of the court, a military commander or person effectively acting as a military commander shall be criminally responsible for crimes within the jurisdiction of the court committed by forces under his or her effective command and control, or effective authority and control as the case may be, as a result of his or her failure to exercise control properly over such forces, where that military commander or person either knew or, owing to the circumstances at the time, should have known that the forces were committing or about to commit such crimes, and B, that military commander or person failed to take all necessary and reasonable measures within his or her power to prevent or repress their commission, or to submit the matter to the competent authorities for investigation and prosecution. Okay. Somebody said, the standard for an arrest warrant at the ICC is not probable cause, it is reasonable grounds. Reasonable grounds is a lower threshold than probable cause, but the prosecutor has to demonstrate substantial grounds to believe in order to have the charges confirmed and moved into the trial chamber. Substantial grounds is similar, if not higher, than probable cause. Okay. Israel, like all states, has a right to take action to defend its population. That right, however, does not absolve Israel or any other state of its obligation to comply with international humanitarian law. Notwithstanding any military goals they may have, the means Israel chose to achieve them in Gaza, namely intentionally causing death, starvation, great suffering, and serious injury to body or health of the civilian population, are criminal. Since last year, in Ramallah, in Cairo, in Israel, and in Rafah, I have consistently emphasized that international humanitarian law demands that Israel take urgent action to immediately allow access to humanitarian aid in Gaza at scale. I specifically underline that starvation as a method of war and the denial of humanitarian relief constitute Rome Statute offenses. I could not have been clearer. This is like the equivalent, I guess, of like a cease and desist, where he's like, you better clean this shit up or I'm coming for you. What you got against Toby Fox? Isn't that the guy that did Undertale? What would I have against him? I specifically underline that starvation is a method of war and the denial of humanitarian relief constitute Rome Statute offenses. I could not have been clearer. As I have also repeatedly underlined in my public statements, those who do not comply with the law should not complain later when my office takes action. That day has come. In presenting these applications for arrest warrants, my office is acting pursuant to its mandate under the Rome Statute. On February 5th, 2021, Pretrial Chamber 1 decided that the court can exercise its criminal jurisdiction in the situation of the state of Palestine, and that the territorial scope of this jurisdiction extends to Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. This mandate is ongoing and includes the escalation of hostilities and violence since October 7th, 2023. My office also has jurisdiction over crimes committed by nationals of state parties and by the nationals of non-state parties on the territory of a state party. So this is basically saying that, like, because because the state of Palestine, and I guess the Palestinian Authority, the PLO, requested that they are now signatories and be treated as members of the International Criminal Court of the Rome Statute, that means that crimes committed against them by people that aren't signatories to the ICC or the Rome Statute can now be prosecuted, is essentially where the jurisdiction is coming from. Today's applications are the outcome of an independent and impartial investigation by my office. Guided by our obligation to investigate incriminating and exonerating evidence equally, my office has worked painstakingly to separate claims from facts and to soberly present conclusions based on evidence to the pretrial chamber. As an additional safeguard, I have also been grateful for the advice of a panel of experts in international law, an impartial group I convened to support the evidence, review, and legal analysis in relation to these arrest warrant applications. Report of the panel of experts in international law. I'm going to read this. Panel of experts in international law convened with the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. Report of the panel of experts in international law. These are the members, academic experts, 20th of May, 2024. So this was published at the same time as this statement, which was, 12 hours ago or something? Or 20 hours ago? Introduction. A panel of experts in international law was convened at the request of the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in support of his investigation into the situation of the state of Palestine, which covers international crimes committed either on the territory of Palestine or by a Palestinian national. The panel's mandate was to advise the prosecutor on whether his applications for arrest warrants met the standard provided in Article 58 of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Okay, so Article 58 is what gives you the standards of evidence required, I guess, to bring charges. I haven't read the entire Rome Statute, but at any time after the initiation of an investigation, the pretrial chamber shall, on the application of the prosecutor, issue a warrant of arrest of a person if, having examined the application and the evidence or other information submitted by the prosecutor, it is satisfied that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the person has committed a crime within the jurisdiction of the court, and the arrest of the person appears necessary to ensure the person's appearance at trial, to ensure that the person does not obstruct or endanger the investigation or the court proceedings, or, where applicable, to prevent the person from continuing with the commission of that crime or a related crime which is within the jurisdiction of the court and which arises out of the same circumstances. Specifically, the panel has been asked to provide an opinion on whether there are reasonable grounds to believe that the persons named in the warrants have committed crimes within the jurisdiction of the court. The panel of experts was composed of the following lawyers: Lord Justice Fulford, retired Lord Justice of Appeal and former Vice President of the Court of Appeal of England and Wales, former judge of the International Criminal Court; Judge Theodora Miron, former judge and president of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. This is the one that I referenced all the time that people talk about for genocide, and special advisor to the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. Amal Clooney, barrister, adjunct professor at Columbia Law School, co-founder of the Clooney Foundation for Justice and special advisor to the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. Danny Friedman, KC, King's Counsel, barrister, expert in criminal law, international law, and human rights. Baroness Helena Kennedy, LT, lieutenant, I don't know, King's Counsel, barrister, member of the House of Lords, and director of the International Bar Association, Human Rights Institute. Elizabeth Wilmhurst, King's Counsel, former deputy legal advisor at the United Kingdom Foreign and Commonwealth Office, distinguished fellow of international law at Chatham House? I don't fucking know. And then it's been supported by two academic advisors, Professor Marko Milanovic? Is this Milanovic? Professor of Public International Law at the University of Reading School of Law, and Professor Sandesh Sivakumaran, Professor of International Law at the University of Cambridge. It's pronounced Chatham House. Okay. The full biographies of the panel members and academic advisors are set out in the Annex. Wait, why? It feels like it's really over-selected for from the United Kingdom. Why? Is it just because that's where this guy's from and he... Is there a reason for that? But I don't know. The panel members and the academic advisors were selected because of their expertise in public international law, international human rights law, and international humanitarian law, and international criminal law, and, in the case of two of them, experience as former judges of international criminal tribunals. The panel was convened at the request of the prosecutor in January 2024, and each panel member was asked to assess objectively the material provided to them by the prosecutor and to advise the prosecutor whether it meets the relevant legal tests. Since that time, the panel has been engaged in an extensive process of review and analysis. Panel members carefully reviewed each of the applications for arrest warrants, as well as underlying evidence, including witness statements, expert. The panel has operated pro bono and independently. It has unanimously reached all the views contained in this report. It will set out its key reasoning below, but notes that it cannot disclose any material that is currently confidential. Jurisdiction. The panel agrees with the prosecutor's assessment of the ICC's jurisdiction in relation to crimes committed on the territory of Palestine, including Gaza, since the 13th of June 2014, under Article 12.2a of the ICC statute. It also agrees that the court has jurisdiction over crimes committed by Palestinian nationals inside or outside Palestinian territory under Article 12.2b of the statute. The ICC therefore has jurisdiction over Israeli, Palestinian, or other nationals who committed crimes in Gaza or the West Bank. It also has jurisdiction over Palestinian nationals who committed crimes on the territory of Israel, even though Israel is not an ICC state party. Remember, if you're a signatory to the ICC and you commit crimes in other countries that aren't signatories, you can still be held responsible. And if people who aren't signatories to the ICC, to the Rome Statute, come and commit crimes in your territory, then you can hold them responsible, even if they're not signatories. Yeah. The basis for the court's jurisdiction is that Palestine, including Gaza, is a state for the purpose of the ICC statute. The ICC's pretrial chamber has already ruled that the court's jurisdiction extends to Palestine as a state party to the ICC statute on this basis. Crimes and applicable law. The applications for arrest warrants charge war crimes and crimes against humanity for both Hamas and Israeli suspects. The panel is aware that additional crimes are under investigation and expected to lead to additional applications in the future. War crimes require a nexus to an armed conflict, and for some war crimes, this conflict must be international. For this reason, it is necessary to assess the situation in Gaza and in Israel to determine whether an armed conflict exists, and if so, its nature. The panel agrees with the prosecutor's conclusion that the conflicts in Israel and Gaza comprise an international armed conflict and a non-international armed conflict running in parallel. Hamas is a highly organized, non-state armed group, and the hostilities between Hamas and Israel have been sufficiently intense to reach the threshold of a non-international armed conflict. The panel's assessment is that the non-international armed conflict between Hamas and Israel began at the latest on the 7th of October 2023 when Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups launched Operation Al-Aqsa Flood against Israel, and Israel launched its Operations Iron Swords in response. The panel has also concluded that there is an international armed conflict between Israel and Palestine on the basis either that Palestine is a state in accordance with the criteria set out in international law, for which there is sufficiently strong argument for the purpose of an application to the court for an arrest warrant, and an international armed conflict arises if a state uses force against a non-state actor on the territory of another state without the latter's consent. Palestine and Israel are both high contracting parties to the 1949 Geneva Conventions, and that pursuant to the text of Common Article 2 of the Conventions, an armed conflict between two high contracting parties is international in character, or there is a belligerent occupation by Israel of at least some Palestinian territory. So only one of these it needs to be met, I guess, for them to say they have jurisdiction. Okay, everything in here is going to be unanimous, so all of the experts, all of the judges, and the lead prosecutor, every statement in here, I'm guessing there's not like a dissenting opinion or anything for any of this. Biographies of the panel members, and then this is more information on the people. These are fake, right? They wear these wigs. It's like their uniforms. Christ. Do you think if I was an internationally recognized, like critically acclaimed human rights lawyer that had like served multiple terms in international courts, do you think they would still use that stupid fucking picture of me? This one or this one? I think that's George Clooney's wife, Amal Clooney. Wait, what? No way. Oh. Jesus. It is George Clooney's wife. Crazy. An impartial group I convened to support the evidence review and legal analysis in relation to these arrest warrant applications. The panel is composed of experts of immense standing in international humanitarian law and international criminal law, including Sir Adrian Fulford, PC, former Lord Justice of Appeal and former International Criminal Court Judge. Okay, we already do this. On His Excellency. Today, we once again underlined that international law and the laws of armed conflict apply to all. No foot soldier, no commander, no civilian leader. No one can act with impunity. Nothing can justify willfully depriving human beings, including so many women and children, the basic necessities required for life, nothing to justify the taking of hostages or the targeting of civilians. The independent judges of the International Criminal Court are the sole arbiters as to whether the necessary standards for the issuance of warrants to arrest have been met. Should they grant my applications and issue the requested warrants, I will then work closely with the registrar in all efforts to apprehend the named individuals. I count on all state parties to the Rome Statute to take these applications and the subsequent judicial decision with the same seriousness they have shown in other situations, meeting their obligations under the statute. I also stand ready to work with non-state parties in our common pursuit of accountability. Oh, I just mean that the average layman doesn't care about intent. They just think people lie and that otherwise intent can't really be proved or something. Would you just start trying to show them intent can be proved? People always get angry with you over this. I mean, I just point to criminal court. In the United States, every single criminal act, except for strict liability, but basically 99% of criminal action requires a criminal state of mind. You have to have intent. If you trip over somebody and you trip into them with a knife and you stab them, that's not murder, right? You don't get charged for murder for that. But it is critical in this moment that my office and all parts of the court, including its independent judges, are permitted to conduct their work with full independence and impartiality. I insist that all attempts to impede, intimidate, or improperly influence the officials of this court must cease immediately. My office will not hesitate to act pursuant to Article 70 of the Rome Statute if such conduct continues. I remain deeply concerned about ongoing allegations and emerging evidence of international crimes occurring in Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank. Our investigation continues. My office is advancing multiple and interconnected additional lines of inquiry, including concerning reports violence during the October 7th attacks and in relation to the large-scale bombings that has caused and continue to cause so many civilian deaths, injuries, and suffering in Gaza. I encourage those with relevant information to contact my office and to submit information via OTP link. My office will not hesitate to submit further applications for warrants of arrest if and when we consider that the threshold of a realistic prospect of conviction has been met. I renew my call for all parties in the current conflict to comply with the law now. I also wish to emphasize that the principle of complementarity, which is at the heart of the Rome Statute, will continue to be assessed by my office as we take action in relation to the above-listed alleged crimes and alleged perpetrators and move forward with other lines of inquiry. Complementarity, however, requires a deferral to national authorities only when they engage in independent and impartial judicial processes that do not shield suspects and are not sham. It requires thorough investigations at all levels addressing the policies and actions underlying these applications. I don't know if this is okay. So I don't have the jurisprudence or the background to know how these normally go, but I believe that this is almost kind of an offer of a way out. So my understanding is that the International Criminal Court, part of the way that you can enforce things that the International Criminal Court might say are illegal is through your own courts. So let's say, for instance, the ICC is looking at you and they're like, I think there are some fucking war crimes going on here. There's definitely some war crimes. Let's say that in your country, you're like, yeah, we know. We've arrested this guy. He's going through our court system now. We're making a good faith effort to prosecute him. If that prosecutorial process is happening in that country, then the ICC doesn't need to pursue anything further. I believe that this is what they mean when they talk about principle of complementarity, that as long as your own courts are holding your own citizens accountable for more, if they're holding your citizens accountable for what the ICC would otherwise prosecute, the ICC doesn't look into it, I believe. Complementarity. The ICC is intended to complement, not to replace, national criminal systems. It prosecutes cases only when states do not or are unwilling. Oh, there should be commas here. It prosecutes cases only when, even they're giving me fucking stroke statements. It prosecutes cases only when states do not, are unwilling, or unable to do so genuinely. So, okay. The statute recognizes that states have the first responsibility and right to prosecute international crimes. The ICC may only exercise jurisdiction where the states are failing to do so or something, right? Where national legal systems fail to do so, including where they purport to act, but in reality are unwilling or unable to genuinely carry out proceedings. Okay. Let us today be clear on one core issue. If we do not demonstrate our willingness to apply the law equally, if it is seen as being applied selectively, we will be creating the conditions for its collapse. In doing so, we will be loosening the remaining bonds that hold us together, the stabilizing connections between all communities and individuals, the safety net to which all victims look in times of suffering. This is the true risk we face in this moment. Now more than ever, we must collectively demonstrate that international humanitarian law, the foundational baseline for human conduct during conflict, applies to all individuals and applies equally across the situations addressed by my office and the court. This is how we will prove tangibly that the lives of all human beings have equal value. Whew. Okay. Real quick, this is a pretty historic thing, I think. Are these warrants a big deal or no? This is just grandstanding. It depends on what you mean by a big deal. Like, is it a big deal in terms of like, is Netanyahu or somebody actually going to be arrested? No. Is it grandstanding? It is kind of grandstanding, but like international opinion and stuff is all about grandstanding. The grandstanding is important because when people go to negotiate deals or when people go to negotiate things, all of these elements or all of these things play a part in those negotiations, basically. Like, if I go to negotiate a final solution for what the border should look like between Israel and Palestine, I can appeal to this and I can say, well, hey, listen, like the ICC literally said you guys committed war crimes against us. That strengthens our argument, right? And then the pressure that allies are going to put on you or the international community are going to put on you to settle things in different ways is going to vary based on like what the international community thinks of you. So you say like, is it actually something happening or is it grandstanding? Like, it is grandstanding, but like the grandstanding is an important part of like how these final arrangements look, basically. Grandstanding carries with it an implication that it's like nothing is happening. Nothing is happening, but it's an important part of the overall process. So something is happening, if that makes sense. But I don't know if that made sense or not. Hopefully that made sense. The United States responds. Warrant applications by the International Criminal Court. Press statement by Antony Blinken, Secretary of State. The United States fundamentally rejects the announcement today from the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court that he is applying for arrest warrants for senior Israeli officials together with warrants for Hamas terrorists. We reject the prosecutor's equivalence of Israel with Hamas. It is shameful. Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization that carried out the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust and is still holding dozens of innocent people hostage, including Americans. Moreover, the United States has been clear since well before the current conflict that the ICC has no jurisdiction over this matter. The ICC was established by its state parties as a court of limited jurisdiction. Those limits are rooted in principles of complementarity, which do not appear to have been applied here, amid the prosecutor's rush to seek those arrest warrants rather than allowing the Israeli legal system a full and timely opportunity to proceed. In other situations, the prosecutor deferred to national investigations and worked with states to allow them time to investigate. The prosecutor did not afford the same opportunity to Israel, which has ongoing investigations and allegations against its personnel. I really wish that they would have said, I wish that he would have given examples here. I don't know if this is true or not. It would be nice to give examples here. There are also deeply, what is the average time for an arrest warrant to be issued after like a crime has supposedly been committed, right? Or allegedly been committed, I should say, right? There are also deeply troubling process questions. Despite not being a member of the court, Israel was prepared to cooperate with the prosecutor. In fact, the prosecutor himself was scheduled to visit Israel as early as next week to discuss the investigation and hear from the Israeli government. The prosecutor's staff was supposed to land in Israel today to coordinate the visit. Israel was informed that they did not board their flight around the same time that the prosecutor went on cable television to announce the charges. Damn, that's a damn. These and other circumstances call into question the legitimacy and credibility of this investigation. If that's true, that's kind of wacky. Fundamentally, this decision does nothing to help and could jeopardize ongoing efforts to reach a ceasefire agreement that would get hostages out and surge humanitarian assistance in, which are the goals of the United States, continues to pursue relentlessly. I agree with this, but this is an argument that needs to be fleshed out quite a bit. The United States published a response rejecting the application for arrest warrants, calling into question the speed at which the prosecutor moved to file charges, to request charges against Israeli leadership. I should probably say, Secretary of State, I should probably call him out, right? Antony Blinken. I don't actually have an article for him. Antony J. Blinken. Do you really need the middle initial? Is that an important? Do people call him that? Do you agree that the document equates Hamas and Israel I mean, in a way, I could see you seeing it that way. I mean, I would say probably not really, but maybe it kind of. I don't know. That's like a political question that I'm not like as concerned with. Somebody in chat, I don't know if this is true or not, but somebody in chat said, for statistics, the ICC has opened proceedings against a total of 54 people in its lifetime of 8,874 allegations. The U.S. will defend Israel no matter what, huh? Probably not. But I mean, obviously we'll defend our allies as much as we can, but I mean, there's going to always be limits, right? Do you think Netanyahu will be prosecuted to the fullest extent, and how will that be carried out? Also, do you think him and Hamas leaders will be treated fairly and accordingly? None of these people are ever going to The Hague. I mean, Netanyahu's not going to fly to a country and get arrested by the ICC. That's not going to happen, right? And then we've got a statement by Lindsey Graham. This outrageous decision is truly a slap in the face to the independent judiciary in Israel, which is renowned for their independence. We must not forget, as a nation, the International Criminal Court threatened to bring action against American forces in Afghanistan, and we are a non-member. I will be issuing a detailed... Well, hold on, that doesn't matter. If Afghanistan is a signatory to the ICC... Afghanistan... fuck, where do I see this? ICC signatories... The states, parties, control. Okay, Afghanistan. When do they sign? I don't know. Deposited its instrument of ascension to the Rome Statute on the 10th of February, 2003. I don't know when they tried to, what the timeline was for all this, but okay. I'll be issuing a detailed statement regarding the outrageous actions by the ICC against the state of Israel. And I will feverishly work with colleagues on both sides of the aisle in both chambers to levy damning sanctions against the ICC. What does that even look like? Oh, sanctions against the ICC. He probably means sanctioning like the individual members, like the prosecutor and stuff like that. That's not good. You probably don't want that. You shouldn't be trying to interfere with that process that much. I feel like that's wildly inappropriate. That's my feeling on it. However, these are my initial thoughts. Most importantly, I want the world to know that I, along with my Republican and Democrat colleagues and members of the administration, engaged the ICC on this issue weeks ago. We were told there would be discussions with Israel before any actions were taken. We stressed that the principle of complementarity should be applied in this case. Complementarity requires the ICC to let the nation in question's legal system move first before any action is taken by the court. Prosecutor Khan's team was supposed to be in Israel today to arrange a meeting for next week with the prosecutor's office about the allegations. I was told by ICC staff that the investigation would likely take months and not weeks, and that there would be meaningful consultation with the state of Israel. Instead of the ICC following through with the scheduled consultation with Israel, they announced the warrants. I feel that I was lied to and that my colleagues were lied to. Prosecutor Khan is drunk with self-importance and has done a lot of damage to the peace process and to the ability to find a way forward. Lying prosecutors never bring about just outcomes. What is Lindsey Graham's position? Is he on a particular committee that would, why is he the one giving big statements on this? Graham is the Senate Judiciary Committee chair. Do they have unique insight or oversight on something like this, or is he just the one who wanted to make a statement about it? Is the Hague Invasion Act a meme? I don't think so. If you tried to arrest a U.S. person, I'm pretty sure the U.S. would go to the Hague and extract that person. That'd be my guess. But I'm pretty sure the Hague, no, I don't think that would ever happen. Why shouldn't the U.S. interfere with the investigation? We already have a bill saying the president can invade the Hague if they charge an American, and they obviously don't respect that court. But we're not. We're America. I just don't think that if you feel like the process is not working well, or if you disagree with how they're handling things, trying to intimidate or influence the outcome through sanctions of that court is dramatically undermining the legitimacy of that court. Because now, let's say hypothetically, let's say that the court is actually, we changed our mind. Well, actually, hold on. Right now, keep in mind that what's happened. The prosecutor has filed an application for an arrest warrant. Now, let's say that the judges look at it and the judges go, well, no, we're not going to do an arrest warrant. What if people look now at the court and they go, well, hold on. You're probably just doing that because the United States said they were going to fucking sanction you if you accepted these arrest warrants and you actually issued them, you okayed them. This is bullshit. This court isn't real anymore, right? That would be an issue in terms of undermining the court, basically.